The heavy bag groaned under the force of my fists, each impact echoing the hollow thud in my chest. Sweat dripped into my eyes, stinging, but I welcomed it. Pain was familiar. Pain was clean. It was the twisting knot in my gut, the one that tightened every time I thought of Mia, that felt unclean, confusing. Coach blew the whistle, sharp and piercing, cutting through the rhythm of leather on leather. "Leo, take 5. You're gonna punch yourself out before the bell even rings," Sal grunted, wiping his own brow with a towel. He'd been my coach since I was a kid. Knew me better than almost anyone. He knew something was off, had known for weeks, but he hadn't pushed. Sal knew when to push and when to let the pressure build until it had to find its own release. I slumped onto the bench, grabbing my water bottle. The gym air was thick with the smell of sweat, liniment, and old leather, smells that usually grounded me, reminded me who I was. Lately, they just felt like part of a life I didn't fully recognize anymore. My life was supposed to be simple. Train, fight, win, go home to Mia. Simple, solid. But 3 weeks ago, simple had shattered. I came home early from a sparring session upstate, wanting to surprise her. I'd walked into our apartment, the key turning silently in the lock, ready with a stupid grin and takeout from her favorite place. The surprise was mine. Voices from the bedroom, hers, soft and laughing, then a man's, low and unfamiliar. I didn't storm in, didn't yell. I just stood there in the hallway, the bag of food growing heavy in my hand, the world tilting on its axis. I heard her say his name, a name I didn't know then, but would soon learn belonged to Marcus Thorne, another fighter, flashy, arrogant, everything I wasn't. I backed out quietly, closing the door with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the sudden silence of my own head. I dropped the food in the outside bin and just walked. Walked for hours until the city lights blurred and my legs ached almost as much as my chest. Mia, my Mia, the girl I'd met at a community fair 5 years ago, the one with the bright eyes and the laugh that could make a whole room feel warmer. We were young, struggling, but we had each other. We built this life together, scrap by scrap. My fights paid the bills. Her steady job kept us afloat between purses. It felt like us against the world. Now I didn't know what it felt like. She hadn't noticed anything different when I finally dragged myself home that night, hours later than planned. She just mumbled about being tired, rolled over in bed, presenting her back to me. The distance that had been creeping in for months suddenly felt like a canyon. Her late nights working, the hushed phone calls she took in the other room, the way she'd flinch sometimes if I touched her unexpectedly. It all clicked into place, a horrifying mosaic of betrayal. I hadn't confronted her. Not yet. What would I say? How could the words even form? Part of me wanted to rage, to demand answers, to break things. Another part, the fighter part, told me to wait, to observe, to gather myself before throwing a punch I couldn't take back. And then, a week later, the fight announcement came. Leo the Lion King versus Marcus the Mauler. Thorne. Main event. My biggest payday yet. Against him. Fate, or maybe just the twisted irony of the universe, had handed me my confrontation on a platter under the bright lights of the ring. Sal walked over, handing me a clean towel. "You all right, kid? You're pushing like it's round 12 already." I nodded, avoiding his gaze. "Just focused, coach. Got a lot riding on this one." He clapped me on the shoulder, his hand rough but steady. "Good. Keep that fire, but don't burn out. Need you sharp, not just angry." He paused. Whatever's eating at you, leave it outside the ropes until fight night. Then use it. Use it. That's what I plan to do. The anger, the hurt, the confusion, I packed it down day after day, converting it into fuel. Every jab, every hook, every grueling mile run was aimed at one face, one name. Marcus Thorne. He hadn't just taken something from Mia, he'd tried to take something from me, from the life I'd bled for. He didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just another fight for me. This was everything. I pushed myself off the bench, the brief rest doing little to ease the ache deep inside. I walked back to the bag, picturing Thorne's smug face on the worn leather. The whistle hadn't blown yet, but I started throwing punches again, letting the rhythm take over, trying to lose myself in the violence of it, trying to forget the image of Mia laughing with another man in the space that was supposed to be ours alone. The bag swung, a heavy pendulum marking time until the inevitable collision. The weeks leading up to the fight were a blur of brutal training and suffocating silence at home. Mornings were sprints on the cold pavement before dawn. Afternoons were sparring sessions that left my partners wary, and evenings were spent pushing weights until my muscles screamed for rest. Sal watched me with hawk eyes, tweaking my technique, sharpening my defense, but mostly just letting me burn. He knew the rage needed an outlet, and better the heavy bag than my own life. At the apartment, Mia moved around me like I was a ghost. She tried sometimes. She'd make dinner, ask about training, even try to initiate small talk. "Saw the promo posters today, Leo," she said one evening, her voice trying too hard to be light. "You look intense. Scary." I just grunted, focusing on my plate. Intense didn't begin to cover it. Scary? She had no idea. Every word from her felt like sandpaper on raw nerves. Her attempts at normalcy were almost worse than the silence. Did she think I was blind, stupid, or did she just not care? "Marcus Thorne," she continued, testing the water, her fork scraping against the ceramic plate. "He's got a flashy record, but Sal says you have the power." I looked up then, meeting her eyes for the first time all evening. "Sal say that?" She nodded quickly, maybe relieved I'd engaged. "Yeah, he thinks Thorne relies too much on speed, leaves himself open." I held her gaze, searching for any flicker of guilt, any sign that she understood the ground had crumbled beneath us. Nothing, just a practiced smile, maybe a little nervousness around the edges. "Power isn't everything," I said quietly, turning back to my food. "Timing is." The double meaning hung in the air, thick and unacknowledged. She didn't press further. The weigh-in was the first time I'd been face to face with Thorne since seeing the fight announcement. He stepped onto the scales, ripped and arrogant, flashing a practiced smile for the cameras. He played the crowd, soaking in the attention. When it was my turn, I stepped up, made weight, and turned to face him for the traditional stare-down. Up close, I could see the faint scar above his eye, the smug confidence in his posture. He leaned in slightly, his voice a low taunt meant only for me. "Heard you train hard, King. Hope you saved some energy. Wouldn't want Mia to be disappointed when her man goes down." My blood ran cold, then hot. Every muscle tensed. It took every ounce of Sal's discipline drilled into me over the years not to react, not to swing right there. Instead, I met his smirk with a dead flat stare. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I just held his gaze, letting him see the cold promise in my eyes. He faltered first, his smile tightening unnaturally before he turned back to the cameras. Sal pulled me back, his hand firm on my shoulder. "Not here, Leo. In the ring." Fight night arrived under a blaze of lights and the roar of the crowd. The energy in the arena was electric, a tangible thing that vibrated through the floor, up my legs. Walking through the tunnel, hood up, music pounding, I felt strangely calm. The weeks of rage, pain, and relentless training had coalesced into a single point of focus. It wasn't about Mia anymore, not entirely. It was about reclaiming something, proving something to myself. Sal gave me final instructions in the corner, his voice steady in my ear. "Stick to the plan. Body first. Wear him down. Don't chase the knockout. Let him make the mistakes." He met my eyes, his gaze serious. "And keep your head. Don't let him get in it." I nodded, touching my gloves to his. Across the ring, Thorne preened, raising his gloves to the crowd, soaking it all in. He looked relaxed, confident. He thought this was just another fight, another step up the ladder. He had no idea what he had walked into. The bell rang. We met in the center of the ring. He was fast, just like Sal said, flicking out jabs, trying to establish distance. I kept my guard high, weathering the initial storm, studying him. His movements were flashy, designed to impress, but there were openings. He dropped his left slightly after throwing the hook. He admired his own work a fraction too long. I focused on the body, digging in hooks to his ribs, trying to sap that speed, take the air out of him. He grunted with the impacts, but kept coming, landing a sharp right that snapped my head back. The crowd roared. Thorne smirked. I tasted copper, ignored the sting, and pressed forward. Round 2 was more of the same. He danced, threw quick combinations. I walked him down, relentless, punishing the body. Sal's voice was a constant presence. "Stay smart, Leo. Pressure. Don't load up." Thorne was getting frustrated. His punches started carrying more weight, less precision. He wanted to end it early, put on a show. Late in the round, he backed me towards the ropes, unleashing a flurry. I covered up, riding it out, feeling the thud of gloves against my arms, my shoulders. Then he dropped his left again just for a heartbeat, telegraphing a big right hand. It was the opening I'd been waiting for. I exploded forward, slipping under his right, and drove a vicious left hook into his ribs, right where I'd been working. I felt the impact reverberate up my arm, heard the sharp expulsion of air from his lungs. His eyes widened, just for an instant, surprise and pain flashing across his face before the fighter's mask slammed back down. He staggered back a step, guard dropping slightly. This was it, the timing Sal talked about. I stepped in, shifting my weight, my entire body coiling like a spring. Everything narrowed down to this single moment. The lights, the crowd, Mia, the betrayal. It all faded into the background, leaving only the target. I threw the right hand straight down the pipe, putting every ounce of frustration, every sleepless night, every silent, agonizing dinner into that single punch. It connected flush on his jaw with a sickening crack. Thorne's eyes rolled back. His body went limp, collapsing backward onto the canvas like a puppet with its strings cut. The referee jumped in immediately, waving it off before Thorne even fully landed. The roar of the crowd was deafening, a physical wave washing over me. Sal was climbing through the ropes, arms raised. I stood there, center ring, chest heaving, knuckles throbbing. Looking down at Thorne's still form, it wasn't satisfaction I felt. Not exactly. Just empty. Sal was yelling something in my ear, slapping my back, his face split in a wide grin. The ref raised my arm. More noise. A chaotic symphony of cheers and shouts. Camera flashes popped like tiny explosions, momentarily blinding me. Medics were hovering over Thorne now, checking his vitals. He was stirring, thankfully. I never wanted to permanently injure anyone, not even him. It was the fight, the win, the statement that mattered. But the roaring triumph I expected to feel wasn't there. The victory felt hollow, the cheers distant. Knocking him out hadn't fixed anything. It hadn't erased the image of him with Mia, hadn't healed the crack running through the foundation of my life. It was just a fight I'd won. A brutal, necessary release, maybe, but not a resolution. Sal draped a towel over my shoulders. Textbook, Leo. Textbook. You listened, you waited, and you delivered. He was ecstatic, already thinking about the next steps, the bigger purses, the title shots. For him, this was a doorway opening. For me, it felt like closing one, but without knowing what lay on the other side. We made our way through the ropes, the crowd pressing close, hands reaching out, voices calling my name. Security formed a tight circle around us, pushing through the throng. The walk back to the locker room felt longer than the fight itself. The adrenaline was starting to ebb, leaving behind a profound weariness that went deeper than muscle fatigue. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the corridor, the noise faded slightly. Sal was still talking, buzzing about the fight, the finish, the future. I nodded along, catching snippets, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought of the apartment, the silence waiting for me there. Would Mia be there? What would her face look like? Would she see the victory, or just the man who had beaten her lover unconscious? We reached the locker room door. Sal pushed it open, ready for the usual chaos of team members, officials, maybe even reporters. But as I stepped inside, my eyes scanned the room. It was mostly empty, except for my gear bag slumped against the lockers and a single figure standing near the back, half hidden in the shadows. Mia! She wasn't smiling. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and uncertain. She looked small, lost, completely unlike the confident woman Thorne had described, unlike the woman who had coolly planned to leave me. She took a hesitant step forward, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Leo," she began, her voice barely a whisper. I stopped just inside the doorway, the towel still around my neck, the sweat cooling on my skin. The emptiness I felt in the ring crystallized into something colder, heavier. Seeing her there, seeing the fear and confusion in her eyes after everything, it didn't spark anger anymore. It just felt like the final, exhausting confirmation of an ending. The knockout hadn't changed the truth. It had only punctuated it. Facing her now, after the roar of the crowd, after the violence in the ring, felt like stepping into a different kind of fight, one without rules or a referee, just the wreckage. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but tired, utterly, bone-deep tired. Sal hesitated at the door, his usual post-fight exuberance dimming as he took in the scene. He glanced from Mia's tear-streaked face back to my stony expression. Leo, maybe I'll just give you guys a minute." He backed out slowly, pulling the door almost shut behind him, leaving a crack of buzzing hallway noise before it clicked softly, plunging the room into a heavy, waiting silence. Mia took another step forward, then stopped, seemingly unsure of what to do, what to say. The silence stretched, filled only by the hum of the overhead lights and the distant, muffled remnants of the arena's energy. I didn't move towards her, didn't offer any opening. I just watched her, the same way I'd watched Thorne before landing the final punch, observing, calculating the distance, but this time feeling no urge to close it. "I saw the fight," she finally managed, her voice thin. "You were amazing, Leo. But when he went down, when you hit him like that—" She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. Was she worried about Thorne or frightened of me? Maybe both. It didn't matter. I felt a disconnect, like watching a scene unfold through thick glass. My body ached, my knuckles throbbed, a cut above my eye had started to sting again. These sensations felt more real than the woman standing before me, the woman who shared my bed, my name, my history. "I know what you must think," she rushed on, words tumbling out now. "About Marcus, about everything. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was confused, Leo, lost. He just paid attention." Paid attention. The words landed like dull thuds. While I was breaking my body in the gym, fighting to build us a better life, worrying about bills, she was lost and finding solace in the attention of another man. A man who, I now knew, saw her as nothing more than a temporary convenience. The irony was bitter, but even that felt distant, muted by the overwhelming fatigue. I walked slowly over to the bench and sat down heavily, the worn vinyl cool against my bare back. I started unwrapping my hands, the tape stiff and sticky with dried sweat and probably a little blood. The repetitive motion was grounding, something familiar in a world turned upside down. Each turn of the tape unwound another layer of the night, the fight, the weeks leading up to it. "Please," she whispered, stepping closer again. Her shadow fell over me. "Can we talk? Can we figure this out? I made a mistake, a terrible mistake." Mistake. That word again. It sounded so small, so inadequate for the chasm she had opened between us. I paused my unwrapping, looking down at my raw knuckles. Figure what out? How to unbreak trust? How to unsee what I'd heard? How to pretend the last few months, maybe longer, hadn't been a lie? I finally looked up at her, meeting her pleading eyes. There was no anger left, no fire, just ashes. "There's nothing to figure out, Mia," I said, my voice low and raspy, worn out from the fight, from everything. Her face crumpled. "Don't say that, Leo. Please don't say that. We can fix this. I know we can." Fix this, like it was a leaky faucet or a flat tire, not the complete demolition of the life we had built. I shook my head slowly, not in anger, but in weary finality. I dropped the balled-up tape onto the floor beside me. My hands felt heavy, empty. "Go home, Mia," I said, turning my gaze away from her, fixing it on the cracked plaster of the locker room wall. "Just go." She stood there for a long moment, silent, except for the sound of her ragged breathing. I didn't look back. I heard her small sob, the rustle of her jacket as she turned, the soft click of the door opening and closing again, leaving me alone in the sudden, profound quiet. The hum of the lights seemed louder now. My hands started to shake just slightly, the adrenaline finally crashing completely. Tired, so incredibly tired. I sat there for how long, I don't know. Long enough for the buzzing in my ears to fade, replaced by the low hum of the building's ventilation, long enough for the throbbing in my hands to become a dull, persistent ache. I unwrapped the other hand slowly, revealing bruised knuckles, split skin. Physical pain was straightforward. It demanded attention, treatment, time. It healed. This other ache, the one spreading through my chest, felt different, deeper, less likely to mend cleanly. The door creaked open again. Sal stuck his head in, his earlier excitement replaced with a quiet concern. "Hey, kid, Doc's ready to look you over. Need stitches on that cut." I nodded numbly, pushing myself up from the bench. My legs felt heavy, unsteady. "Yeah, okay, Coach." He didn't mention Mia, didn't ask. He just threw a reassuring arm around my shoulders, steering me towards the medical room down the hall. "Good fight, Leo. Real good fight. You did everything right in there." Did I? I won. I knocked out the man who had betrayed me. But sitting here now, the victory felt like ashes in my mouth. It hadn't changed the fundamental truth. It hadn't restored what was broken. Getting stitched up was a blur. The doctor worked quickly, efficiently, his voice calm as he talked about keeping it clean, watching for infection. Sal stood nearby, handling the post-fight formalities, signing papers. I felt detached, like I was watching myself from a distance. Finally, cleaned up and changed into street clothes, it was time to leave. The arena was mostly empty now, the echoes of the crowd replaced by the sounds of the cleanup crew packing away chairs, sweeping floors. A crumpled promotional poster lay near an overflowing bin, Thorne's smug face staring up from the discarded paper. I averted my eyes. The drive back to the apartment was quiet. Sal drove, navigating the late-night streets while I stared out the passenger window. The city lights slid past, streaks of color against the dark glass. Usually, after a win, this drive felt electric, full of possibility. Tonight, it just felt like a long journey toward something I didn't want to face. "You want me to come up?" Sal asked quietly as he pulled up in front of my building. I shook my head. "No, Coach. Thanks. I'm good." He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. "All right, Leo. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. Get some rest." "Yeah. Thanks, Sal." I got out, grabbed my gym bag from the back seat, and watched him drive away until his taillights disappeared around the corner. The building entrance felt unfamiliar. The lobby, usually just a space I passed through without thought, seemed too bright, too empty. Riding the elevator up, I watched the numbers change, each floor bringing me closer to the apartment door, closer to the silence on the other side. I paused outside the door, key in hand. Did I even want to go in? Where else would I go? This was my home, or it had been. Taking a deep breath, I unlocked the door and pushed it open. Darkness greeted me, complete silence. She wasn't here. Maybe she'd gone to a friend's. Maybe she'd packed a bag. Maybe she was waiting for me to call, to rage, to forgive. I didn't know, and in that moment, I found I didn't care where she was. I didn't turn on the lights. I walked through the familiar space, now alien in the dark. My footsteps echoed slightly on the hardwood floors. On a side table, moonlight caught the edge of a silver frame, a picture of Mia and me, taken a few years ago on vacation. Both of us smiling, young, unaware of the cracks that would eventually shatter everything. I didn't pick it up. I dropped my bag by the door and walked over to the couch, sinking into the cushions. The fabric still smelled faintly of her perfume. I leaned my head back, closing my eyes, listening to the absolute quiet of the empty apartment. Silence never felt so loud. I sat there in the dark, letting the stillness settle around me. The adrenaline was completely gone now, leaving a dull ache in its place, a physical echo of the deeper hollowness inside. My apartment, usually a refuge, felt vast and cold. Every familiar shape, the armchair in the corner, the lamp on the table, the outline of the window overlooking the street, seemed foreign, stripped of its comfort. My mind replayed the fight, not with triumph, but with a detached curiosity. The thud of my gloves against Thorne's ribs, the satisfying crack when the final punch landed, seeing him fall. It had felt important then, necessary. A physical manifestation of the rage and betrayal I'd carried for weeks. But now, it was just a memory of violence already fading, leaving no warmth behind. It hadn't purged anything. It hadn't brought clarity. It had just happened. And Mia, her face in the locker room, pale, tearful, desperate, her pleas, her excuses. Mistake. Confused. Paid attention. Each word felt like a tiny pebble dropped into a well, the ripples spreading out, disturbing the surface but never reaching the bottom. Did she understand the depth of what she'd done? Did she think a few tears and apologies could bridge the canyon between us? Maybe she did. Maybe she genuinely believed it could be fixed. But sitting here in the wreckage of what our life had been, I knew it couldn't. Trust wasn't a switch you could just flip back on. It was a foundation, and ours had been pulverized. You can't rebuild on dust. A car passed by on the street below, its headlights briefly sweeping across the far wall, illuminating the framed photo for a second before plunging it back into shadow. That smiling couple in the picture felt like strangers now, ghosts from a different lifetime, a lifetime before secrets and lies had seeped into the cracks. I ran a hand over my face, feeling the stubble, the swelling around my eye, the small bandage from the stitches. Physical reminders of the fight. Tangible, understandable. Unlike the twisting knot inside me, winning hadn't untied it. Seeing her break hadn't eased it. What now? What did tomorrow look like? Training? Another fight? Coming home to this silence day after day? The future felt like a vast empty space, a blank canvas I had no energy or desire to paint. Sal's words echoed, "You did everything right in there." In the ring, maybe, but out here, in this quiet, echoing apartment, I didn't feel like I'd done anything right. I just felt adrift. I pushed myself up from the couch, the movement stiff, painful. Maybe sleep would help. Maybe darkness and oblivion were the only comfort left tonight. I walked towards the bedroom, stopping at the doorway. Her scent lingered here too, fainter but present. The bed was neatly made, undisturbed, just tired, so damn tired of it all. I stepped into the bedroom. It felt colder than the living room, emptier. This was the room where we'd whispered secrets, shared dreams, held each other through bad nights. Now it felt like a museum exhibit, artifacts of a life that no longer existed. Her side of the closet was closed. Her favorite book lay on the nightstand, bookmark still in place. Small details, sharp reminders. I didn't touch anything. Didn't open the closet, didn't look too closely at the nightstand. It felt like trespassing in my own life. The fight, the victory, the adrenaline, it had all burned away, leaving this stark, quiet reality. There was no crowd roaring here, no opponent to knock down, just the four walls and the heavy weight of what was irrevocably broken. I walked over to the window, pulling back the edge of the curtain. The streetlights cast long, distorted shadows on the pavement below. A few cars passed, their taillights shrinking into the distance. The city felt distant, indifferent. The fight hadn't been the end of the story. It was just the end of that story, the one where Leo and Mia King had a future. Now there was just Leo, alone in a dark room, the silence pressing in. I let the curtain fall back into place, plunging the room back into near darkness. My reflection stared back from the darkened glass for a fleeting second, bruised, tired, hollow-eyed. What a mess. Just a goddamn mess.